Facebook gets a bad rap?
Well, first, I want to challenge really every aspect of this story, starting with the idea of the so-called whistleblower. What crime exactly did she blow the whistle on? I mean, this term whistleblower was invented to describe an employee who blows a whistle on a crime. What exactly did Facebook do wrong? What Facebook seems to have done is study the impact of its product on users. And for that, they are being, they've become this whipping boy, like I said. I mean, what they've been accused of in terms of promoting, divisive or angry or polarizing content, I mean, isn't that the business model every single night of cable news? In terms of promoting body image issues, I mean, isn't that the entire business model of Hollywood and in terms of TV shows, the fashion industry, advertising? I mean, how is Facebook uniquely to blame for any of these issues? All it seems to me is that they studied it. That is basically the essence of what she leaked, is that they've studied the issue.
They studied the impact of its products on children and found that its products, in fact, do harm children, but to our knowledge, didn't do anything about it. If that's not where you draw the line, then where do you draw the line?
Well, I think we're sort of jumping the gun on that. I mean, there are some data points in those studies that have been, have now been sort of passed around through the echo chamber. But let's look at what those data points actually were. The biggest one, the one that upon which this entire body image issue rests, is the idea that 32% of teen girls said that Facebook or Instagram made their issues worse. But if you actually look at the way that question was worded in the survey they conducted, it began with if you are already experiencing body image issues, does Instagram make it worse? 32% said yes. In other words, more than 2/3 of the teen girls who were experiencing body image issues said that it was not making it worse. In fact, some of them said it was making it better. So, and the other thing that's sort of lacking here is a benchmark. Well, is 32% a bad number? I mean, what is the number if you ask that exact same question to the universe of teen girls who are experiencing body image issues? You said to them, do reality shows make you feel worse about your body? Do magazine advertisements make you feel worse? Does the Met Gala make you feel worse? I bet you they would score worse than 32%. So we just don't have those data points. Instead, we're sort of jumping to conclusions here about the idea that Instagram or Facebook is sort of uniquely evil. I mean, again, if they had never conducted that survey, we wouldn't even be talking about this.
No one is saying that reality shows are perfect, or that TikTok or Twitter or Reddit or YouTube or fashion magazines are perfect. The issue here is Facebook. If you look at Facebook, do you see anywhere that they're at fault?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that I've called Facebook out on, starting with the fact that they deplatformed the sitting president of the United States. I thought that was an outrageous decision. Facebook has made a lot of bad decisions with respect to free speech, but we should understand that the agenda here is not to promote more speech, is to basically to engage in more censorship. That fundamentally is my objection to what's happening here. Is, look, I don't have a specific agenda to defend Facebook. I have I guess, an agenda or belief that free speech needs to be defended. And what is this all about? You had the so-called whistleblower appear on 60 Minutes, this great unveiling. Less than 36 hours later, she's testifying on Capitol Hill in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. That just doesn't happen. I mean, Congress does not move that fast. Government does not operate that quickly. She's been working with the Senate staff, the Judiciary Committee, for weeks. And that committee has hauled Zuckerberg up no fewer than 4 times in order to lecture him on how he needs to be censoring more. That is what this is all about. There's an agenda of censorship. Now, the Senate Judiciary Committee is not allowed to censor a free press. The Constitution protects us from that. But the Constitution, unfortunately, does not guarantee a free news feed. They can regulate the news feed. That is what this is all about. It's an end run around the Constitution to regulate free speech by the senators on that judiciary who've already stated their intentions quite explicitly. This is not some conspiracy theory on my part. They have said over and over again that they want Zuckerberg and Dorsey and other social networks to take down more speech. That is what the agenda is.
Do you think Facebook can turn around its public image, its image among lawmakers with Mark and Sheryl leading the company, or do they need a bigger change at the top?
Well, no, I don't think they need a bigger change. I do think that they need to basically get on to basically defend the principle of free speech. I mean, the reason why I think they're in such bad shape right now is because they've been sort of adrift in terms of principle. I mean, as soon as you admit that it's okay to regulate free speech, which is basically what they've been doing for the last few years, then where do you draw the line? Now the machinery of the of their social network and the newsfeed can be co-opted by anybody who thinks censorship is okay. I think they should have defended free speech from the beginning and they wouldn't be in this mess. But I don't think it's too late. And I think they should start by pointing out the hypocrisy of all these calls for regulation. Again, I don't see one thing that Facebook has been accused of that cable news is not worse on, that Hollywood is not worse on, that the fashion industry is not worse on. So why should Facebook alone be regulated? Now, if the people calling for regulation also want to regulate in a very socially conservative way all of these different areas of our culture, I could respect that position as being consistent. I wouldn't necessarily agree with it. But the people who are making these arguments are not traditional religious conservatives. They're not calling.
How about the algorithm? I know you think the algorithm issues get blown out of proportion, but Facebook has this range of engagement metrics from happy face to sad face, angry, hearts, and they use those metrics and how often we use them to serve us up what they think we want to see. Is that better than consumers making their own choices about what they see on Facebook's news feed or whatever you want to call it, or not?
That's what the algorithm is doing, is giving consumers more of what they want. I mean, that's all the algorithm is. We talk about it.
But why shouldn't consumers have the freedom to choose?
Well,
why
they
should
do.
Facebook be making that decision?
Emily, let me finish my point. I mean, so the purpose of the algorithm, it's almost like a Nielsen rating system that's been digitized and sped up. What it does is just tracks what users respond to, and it gives them more of that. That is the consumer choice principle. The issue is that there are people with an agenda who want to replace your choice over what you listen to or what you watch in your newsfeed with what they think you should be listening to. That is what I object to. And by the way, I mean, look, if I were to ask you or just about any viewer out there about their own Facebook usage, I think what everyone would tell me is that it's a mildly amusing diversion. They get some useful information out of it. There's a lot of noise. They certainly don't think it's a brainwashing machine. They don't think they're getting pumped full of disinformation. But if you ask people about other people's usage, they would tell you that it's this incredibly nefarious thing that people are basically being programmed. And so there's a sharp dichotomy between what people think about their own usage versus other people's usage. And what I would argue is that we all understand our own usage. That is the truth of the matter. And we've just been fed this narrative about other people's usage that isn't really true.
Interesting. Okay, well, we're not going to solve these disagreements and issues in a 7-minute segment, so we're going to have to take this offline. But I do want to ask you about the fundraiser you're hosting for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who obviously is a very divisive figure, has made some choices that are questionable when it comes to public health. I know that you don't necessarily agree with all of them, but why do you support such a divisive candidate, especially given the global health crisis we are still facing?
Why is he inherently more divisive than, say, Gavin Newsom or someone on the other side of the spectrum? See, what I would argue is that words like polarizing and divisiveness, they assume a normative baseline in which everybody agrees. Everyone in the tech industry agrees because they all come from a certain information bubble. And anyone who deviates from that orthodoxy is perceived as divisive. I would argue that the country, there's a multiplicity of views, and you're not divisive just because you don't agree with the orthodoxy of Silicon Valley.
So, but why DeSantis over many of the other candidates who you could host fundraisers for? I mean, I know you're bullish on Florida, but DeSantis and Mayor Suarez, who was actually on the show earlier this hour, are on different ends of the spectrum.
I've donated to Suarez too. But I like both of them. I like Suarez because he's been extremely welcoming towards the tech ecosystem in Miami. I think that's a smart strategy. I don't get why the politicians in San Francisco don't do that. I mean, they're killing the golden goose. In terms of why I like DeSantis, he was the first governor to stop these insane lockdowns. And, you know, he found the right policy on lockdowns, which was to stop them. And he did it despite an extremely hostile media. So I respect that. When somebody takes the right position on an issue, despite the hostility of the media, that's something I can really respect. That's why I support it.